So in 2017, they did what's called a systematic review, looking at what people thought about sex during pregnancy. And they looked at 34 studies from a variety of low to middle income countries, the majority. There was one study in the United States. But ultimately, what did people feel about sex? And there was obviously positive, but also negative beliefs. The most common belief was that it could hurt the fetus. About a third of people felt like having sex in some way, shape, or form could hurt the baby. About 17% thought it could result in miscarriage, 15% thought it could result in bleeding, 12% thought that it could lead to preterm labor, and in the positives, there was only 9% of people who thought that it made labor easier. So what is the truth? Ultimately, when you look at how often people are having sex during pregnancy, there is generally a decline from pre-pregnancy. So when people are having sex 6 to 21 times a month, that goes down to about 3 to 10 times a month in the first trimester. Then it goes from 2 to 7 times in the second trimester a month, and then from 1 to 5 times in the third trimester. But when you look at the averages, it shows a little bit different, right? So prior to pregnancy, it's about 7 times a month. The first trimester, it goes down to about 4.5 times a month. And then it goes to 7 times in the second trimester and then drops again in the third trimester to 1 to 2 times. So ultimately, what we're seeing is that very often there is a decline in the frequency of sex. And oftentimes there's also a decline in desire during that time, often because there's a lot of nausea, the body is changing. And so there is some negative body image thoughts. And then ultimately that tends to improve by the second trimester, where libido tends to increase. And then during the third trimester, the size of the growing fetus can become very large and make it a little bit more difficult to have sex in certain positions, which can also lead to some decline in sexual activity. But despite this, we know that 50 to 75% of couples are still having sex in the last trimester, and 30% are still having sex in the last month. And even if they're abstaining from sex, they're still having oral sex about 30% of the time, other types of sex, or manual stimulation. And so there's still some activities of sexual stimulation and potentially orgasm that happen in that last trimester.